Welcome to part 5 of the lesson Enemy. This is in fact the last part of the lesson. In the previous sessions, we found that Dr. Sadao narrated the entire incident of the American prisoner to the general, and he promised Sadao that he would send a few assassins to kill the American prisoner without creating any trouble for the doctor. Sadao agreed to it because he could no longer bear the strain of having the prisoner in his house, and for 3 nights he waited for the assassins and they never turned up. So Sadao takes a bold decision to make some arrangements for the prisoner to escape. So you can write in the margin, escape of the prisoner. "You are well," Sadao agreed. He lowered his voice. "You are so well that I think if I put my boat on the shore tonight," underline first point, "if I put my boat on the shore tonight with food and extra clothing," underline second point, "in it you might be able to row to that little island not far from the coast," third point, island. "It is so near the coast that it has not been worth fortifying, it has not been worth protecting. Nobody lives on it because in storm it is submerged, it goes under water. But this is not the season of storm. You could live there until you saw a Korean fishing boat pass by," underline the fourth point, wait for a Korean fishing boat. "They pass quite near the island because the water is many fathoms deep there." The young man stared at him, slowly comprehending. "Do I have to?" he asked. "I think so," Sadao said gently. "You understand, it is not hidden that you are here." He is referring to the servants and also to the general to whom he had told about the prisoner's presence in his house. The young man nodded in perfect comprehension. "Okay," he said simply. Sadao did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore, and in it he put food and bottled water, underline the arrangements he made, that he had bought secretly during the day, as well as 2 quilts he had bought at a pawn shop where things are sold. The boat he tied to a post in the water, for the tide was high. There was no moon and he worked without a flashlight. So he is making all arrangements for the prisoner to escape. He bought food and bottled water, and he is also keeping 2 quilts for the prisoner. When he came to the house, he entered as though he were just back from his work, and so Hannah knew nothing. "Yumi was here today," she said, "and she served his supper." "Yumi was here today," she said as she served his supper. Though she was so modern, still she did not eat with him. "Yumi cried over the baby," she went on with a sigh. "She misses him so." "The servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone," Sadao said. He went into the guest room that night before he went to bed himself and checked carefully the American's temperature, the state of the wound, and his heart and pulse, underline those 3 points. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because of excitement. The young man's pale lips were pressed together and his eyes burned. Only the scars on his neck were red. "I realize you are saving my life again," he told Sadao. "Not at all. It is only inconvenient to have you here any longer." He had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight, but he had decided to give it to him after all. It was a small one, his own, which he used at night when he was called. So the next point is flashlight. "If your food runs out before you catch a boat," he said, "signal me 2 flashes at the same instant the sun drops over the horizon. Do not signal in darkness, for it will be seen. If you are all right but still there, signal me once. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw, a fire would be seen. Mark that whole paragraph, the final instructions given to the prisoner by Sadao. Okay, the young man breathed. He was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Sadao had given him, and at the last moment Sadao wrapped a black cloth about his blond head. Now, Sadao said. The young American, without a word, shook Sadao's hand warmly and then walked quite well across the floor and down the step into the darkness of the garden. Once, twice, Sadao saw his light flash to find his way. But that would not be suspected. He waited until from the shore there was one more flash. Then he closed the partition. That night he slept. So you find Dr. Sadao is patiently waiting to see the American prisoner walk away from his home. And that night he could sleep peacefully because there was no threat of the American prisoner anymore. You say the man escaped? The general asked faintly. He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which Sadao had been called in the night. For 12 hours, Sadao had not been sure the general would live. The gallbladder was too much involved. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins. So far as he knew, they had never come. The servants had returned, and Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and had burned sulphur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. Nobody said anything. Only the gardener was cross because he had got behind with his chrysanthemums. So you find once the American prisoner left the house, the servants returned, all of them got back to their work. Only the gardener was a bit angry because he couldn't keep up with the plants that he grew. But after a week, Sadao felt the general was well enough to be spoken to about the prisoner. Yes, Excellency, he escaped, Sadao now said. He coughed, signifying that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. But the old man opened his eyes suddenly. That prisoner, he said with some energy. Did I not promise you I would kill him for you? You did, Excellency, Sadao said. Well, well, the old man said in a tone of amazement. So I did. But you see, I am suffering a good deal. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forgot my promise to you. So you find General is a self-absorbed man who thinks only of himself. He forgets the promise given to Dr. Sadao, and at the same time he is a bit relieved also listening to the news that the American prisoner escaped. And you find Sadao is not only a good doctor but also a true patriot. That is why he told the truth to the general, otherwise he would have kept it as a secret. I wondered, Your Excellency. It was certainly very careless of me, the general said. But you understand, it was not lack of patriotism or dereliction of duty. He looked anxiously at the doctor. If the matter should come out, you would understand that, wouldn't you? Now, Dr. Sadao is safe because he had already told the matter to the general, and it was up to the general to decide what should be done with the prisoner, and unfortunately, he forgot the promise. Certainly, Your Excellency, Sadao said. He suddenly comprehended that the general was in the palm of his hand and that as a consequence he himself was perfectly safe. I can swear to your loyalty, Excellency, he said to the old general, and to your zeal against the enemy. You are a good man, the general murmured and closed his eyes. you will be rewarded. But Sadao, searching the spot of black in the twilighted sea that night, had his reward. Underline, what was his reward? There was no prick of light in the dusk. No one was on the island. His prisoner was gone, safe, doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. Dr. Sadao is relieved at the thought of the fact that the prisoner has already escaped. Now, in the last paragraph, you find a list of people whom Sadao had met in America. He stood for a moment on the veranda, gazing out to the sea from whence the young man had come that other night. And into his mind, although without reason, there came other white faces he had known. The professor, underline, the professor at whose house he had met Hannah, a dull man, and his wife, the second person, had been a silly, talkative woman in spite of her wish to be kind. He remembered his old teacher of anatomy, third one, who had been so insistent on mercy with the knife, and then he remembered the face of his fat and slatternly landlady. He had had great difficulty in finding a place to live in America because he was a Japanese. The Americans were full of prejudice, and it had been bitter to live in it, knowing himself their superior. How he had despised, hated the ignorant and dirty old woman who had at last consented to house him in her miserable home. So he is talking about the landlady who gave him shelter in America when other people avoided him. He had once tried to be grateful to her because she had in his last year nursed him through influenza. But it was difficult, for she was no less repulsive to him in her kindness. Now, the last person, he remembered the youthful, haggard, lean and thin face of his prisoner, white and repulsive. Strange, he thought. I wonder why I could not kill him. So you can see that Dr. Sadao is not only a good doctor, but a true patriot and over and above a good human being. So that's the end of the lesson. Thank you, children.